The women who performed strength acts in the 19th century did so inside a world that had already decided what they were supposed to be. Victorian society built an entire culture around the idea that women were physically delicate, emotionally fragile, and biologically unfit for strenuous labor. That same society then paid money, good money, to watch women lift grown men over their heads while wearing corsets, petticoats, and formal gowns that weighed as much as a small child. The demand was real, the money was real, and the weight was also very real. What happened to the women caught inside that contradiction is what we are getting into today. This one goes deep, so if you're not subscribed yet, do that now, because this is exactly the kind of thing we cover here. The Victorian obsession with feminine weakness is what actually created the market for these performers. Because a strong woman wasn't supposed to exist, watching one became something audiences processed as supernatural rather than athletic. Promoters leaned into this hard. These women were billed as anomalies, freaks of nature, blessed by God, and touched by something beyond human. The framing kept audiences comfortable because it meant they didn't have to revise their understanding of women. They could watch and still believe what they walked in believing. The physical cost of performing under those conditions has been largely ignored in historical records. Lifting hundreds of pounds is demanding enough on its own. Doing it inside clothing engineered to compress the ribcage and restrict the hips on stages lit by gas lamps, in poorly ventilated theaters, multiple shows a night is a different matter entirely. These were not casual displays. They were grueling, athletic performances dressed up as effortless magic. The rule that defined the physiological experience of nearly every one of these performances was simple and suffocating. Never let the audience see you struggle. No grimacing, no visible breath, no shaking in the arms, and no moment of human effort. The performance of effortlessness was just as mandatory as the lift itself, because the moment a woman looked like she was working, the illusion collapsed. She stopped being supernatural and became just a person doing something very hard, and that was not what was being sold. Living inside that requirement, show after show, year after year, left a mark that went well beyond the physical. The corset was not a passive garment. It was a structural device that actively reshaped the body, compressing the lower ribs inward and pushing the organs below them down to create a silhouette Victorian society considered appropriately feminine. For a woman who spent her days doing laundry or sitting at a desk, this was comfortable. For a woman whose job required her to crouch under hundreds of pounds of iron and stand up with it, the corset was working directly against every physical demand the body needed to meet. Breathing during heavy physical exertion is diaphragmatic. The diaphragm drops, the ribcage expands, and the lungs fill. A tightly laced corset makes that expansion impossible. The ribs are already being held in a compressed position, which means the body is drawing breath from a fraction of its actual lung capacity before the lift even begins. During the lift itself, when the body is screaming for oxygen, there is simply nowhere for that breath to go. Performers were essentially exerting maximum effort movements in a state of chronic structural oxygen restriction. The steel stays built in the corset didn't flex with the body. They held their shape while the body moved around them, which meant that during a deep squat or an overhead press, the edges of those stays were pressing into soft tissue and organs under load. Done once, that is painful. Done across years of multiple performance per week, the internal damage accumulates in ways that Victorian medicine had neither the language nor the interest to properly document. Many of these women carried that damage quietly for the rest of their lives. What made the physical weight so specific and so heavy was that none of this could show on the face. The performance required a serene expression, often a smile, maintained from the moment the act began to the moment the weight was set down. The audience needed to believe there was no effort happening. That meant a woman dealing with restricted breathing, still pressing into her ribs, and the full physical demand of a serious strength movement had to simultaneously manage her face as a separate performance running in parallel. That is not a small thing. Over time, the mental discipline required to disconnect the facial expression from what the body was actually experiencing became its own form of physiological erosion, a learned dissociation that didn't simply switch off when the show ended. The relationship these women had with their own bodies was fundamentally broken by the nature of what they were required to do and how the world responded to them doing it. A performing strong woman was not understood as an athlete. She was understood as an object of spectacle, something to be looked at, monetized, and explained away. Promoters made decisions about her body, her billing, her costuming, and her performance without consulting her as a person with opinion about any of it. The body was the product. The woman inside it was largely incidental to the transaction. What that created over time was a specific kind of internal fracture. The performers existed in a state where the thing that made them valuable was also the thing that made them feel invisible. The strength was real, the training was real, and none of it was framed as athletic achievement. It was framed as a curiosity, a biological accident, something that happened to them rather than something they built. When your life's work is consistently described as something you didn't earn, the psychological result is a disconnection from your own sense of urgency that doesn't resolve itself easily. The isolation was structural. On stage, a strong woman was the center of the room. Off it, she occupied an uncomfortable social position that Victorian society had no real category for. She wasn't fragile enough to be treated as a conventional woman, so she didn't fit the existing framework for athletes. Physicians wrote about strong women in medical literature as anomalies to be studied, using language that was clinical and detached in ways that reflected how they were privately regarded. Being treated as a medical specimen by people who had just watched an entire audience applaud you is a particular kind of dehumanization that leaves a mark. The personal writing that survived from some of these women reveal how deeply that dehumanization settled into their self-perception. Several described their public persona in terms that suggested it had become something separate from them entirely, a surface they wore rather than an identity they inhabited. The language that appears repeatedly in these accounts is the language of hardness, of becoming something that could not penetrate or damage, and of flesh that had turned into something closer to stone. That wasn't pride. It was a description of what happens when a person spends years performing in vulnerability for an audience that needs to believe it. At some point, the performance stops being something you do and starts being something you are. And by then, the distance between the mask and the person underneath it is very difficult to measure. Thank you for watching. Until the next one.